Thanks, Glenn. Steve Lamb, alcoholic. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. If you're new, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. It looks like there were a few of you that are relatively new, and a couple of you I recognize. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. It's always good to be able to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I like the reading this morning. I think it ended with something about readiness to serve others. Uh, My sobriety date is July 27th, 1996. So I've been sober 26 years and some change. And when I first got here, I was not ready to serve others. I remember it took me about 100 days to get a sponsor. But when I finally got a sponsor, I remember my sponsor was encouraging me to be of service. And one of the things he wanted me to do was he wanted to take this guy, McNeil. McNeil didn't have a car. He had a bunch of DUIs, and where he lived was kind of en route to where kind of between work and where my home group in Hermosa Beach met. So my sponsor, Michael, would say, McNeil, you should take McNeil, drive him to the meet. I'm like, I don't like McNeil. And he's like, well, what's the problem? I said, well, McNeil, he just keeps talking. All he does is talk, 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 talk. Guy drives me crazy. He won't shut up. And I said, well, that's not the point. The point to be of service, And I'm like, oh, all right. So I would take McNeil, I'd pick him up. And as soon as I picked him up, the guy would not stop talking. I mean, he just drove me crazy. And I would complain to my sponsor about it. And then after about, I don't know, it was a couple months, I found out that McNeil got another ride, which pissed me off because that's my guy. I'm supposed to take him, and because that's my service commitment, right? And what I realized was that when McNeil was in my car and talking, chatting endlessly, I was not thinking about myself. I was thinking about McNeil because the guy was just a head trip, and and I was able to get out of self and into whatever concept you have of God by just listening to McNeil. And when McNeil got another ride, I thought, God, I got to find another McNeil. Got to get another guy. And I've been blessed because I've been in service, not willingly initially, but I've sponsored a lot of guys. I sponsored quite a few guys, and these guys are a divine distraction. I mean, I'll probably talk about this a little later, but I got shot 7 years ago, and I'm in the hospital, and I'm kind of feeling sorry for myself, and these guys are calling me, right? And you know they're they're appropriately responding by saying, hey, this is so and so, how you doing? They ask me, how you doing? They don't care how you're doing. They don't care. They don't really care. I start trying to explain to them, well, I had kind of a bad day. I got shot. I'm in the hospital. And they interrupt me. They're like, yeah. I got that. But, I need to talk to you. I need to do some inventory about, because she's driving me crazy because they want to talk about themselves. They don't want to talk about me, which is initially is annoying. But that's the point of service, is to be distracted, to be divinely distracted by others and to get closer to whatever your concept of God is. And my friend Ralph W., he likes to say that when you're new, you got to pray. You don't even have to believe in God, but everybody who's new says a prayer. And the prayer is usually some version of help me, help, I need help. And then after a while, when you're physically sober for a little bit, it kind of translates into give me. Yeah, I need something, give me. And then eventually when you get to a kind of a purer form of prayer, it's use me. And that's all about service, and it's all about love and service. And the thing that's weird about service is initially it sounds like work, but it feels like God, and it feels like love. But it takes a while if you're new to get into that. It certainly took me a while. When I was new, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because I got sentenced to go to AA and a DUI. And remember, the first day was July 27th, 1996. I'm at my home group. It wasn't my home group at the time, but I'm there, and I don't want to be there. I don't want to be sober. I don't want to get sober. I don't want to stay sober. and it'd been kind of a rough weekend for me. So I thought, well, I got to go to these meetings. I'll just kind of take a nap. I'll just kind of chill out while they're doing the meeting, right? And so I was sitting next to this kind of coffee making machine. I didn't realize that at the time, and I'm dozing off, and this guy next to me who I didn't know this guy. This guy named Dick Dolmich. He died quite some time ago, but he had 15 years of sobriety at the time, which was forever. And Dick helped a lot of people, and he was a retired fire captain. He was a little bit on the deaf side, so he shared the same way every morning, which I did not know, but everybody else knew. And he would yell, "Hi, my name's Dick, and I'm an alcoholic." And when you're trying to take a little nap, that's a little disturbing. So I kind of got startled, and I'm on these folding metal chairs and my butt sliding off, and I went to grab on, and I grabbed the coffee making machine, which is hot. So I yelped a little bit, and I'm looking around, damn, and everybody's in the room, and they're looking at me, and they're kind of laughing. They're going, "Hey, welcome to AA." And I'm thinking, what is this crap? This is just unbelievable. And I didn't want to get sober. I didn't want to stay sober. And they're sharing about stuff. Some guy said, we're going to have a birthday. So what he did was, they're celebrating this birthday. They said they were going to have a cake. They didn't have a cake. They had an inverted styrofoam cup that they plopped a candle on. And they lit this thing. It's this molten inferno of styrofoam and a candle, and they're all proud, right? And this person comes up, and they sing happy birthday, terribly out of key, and this person, I don't know, they had a few years of sobriety, and they blow out the candle, and they thank everybody for the cake. And I'm thinking, that's not a cake. It's not even a pastry. I don't even know what the hell's going on here, but this is bizarre, right? And everybody's all happy, and they're talking about, how they've recovered from the seemingly hopeless condition of mind and body, and they're all cheery, and I'm not cheery. I'm not happy. I don't want to be there, and this is just awful. And I'm thinking I'm never going to come back. And I pretty much went to that meeting every morning for about a year, because I had nowhere else to go. And what happened was, I started listening to you, and you were telling my story, and it was my story, and I don't like my story, and I didn't want to be there. And, I'm the kind of alcoholic, my wife would send me out to get milk, and I'd run into somebody like Giselle, and she's, I know Giselle. She seems like she's nice and sweet and all, but she's not, and she would say something to me like, "Would you like to have a beer?" Of course I'd like to have a beer. I mean, it's like a basic food group, right? So Giselle and I would go out for a beer, and I start drinking. So what happens is, it doesn't quench my thirst. I get thirstier, and I can't control and enjoy my drinking. I want to get there. I don't even know where there is, but I know it's not here, and I want to get there. And so I start drinking tequila. I'm shooting tequila and drinking beer, and 3 days later I come to, and I realize I got to go get the milk. So I run to the store, I get the milk, I show my wife. I'm all proud of myself. She's not happy about this. She's seriously pissed off, because I've been gone for 3 days, and I'm delusional, and I'm judgmental, and I don't understand what the problem is, because it feels like I just accomplished this seemingly impossible task that I'm all proud of myself, and she's not. And I don't want to be sober, but I realize that I got to stop drinking. So I'm not drinking, and I'm certainly not an authority in AA. I wasn't appointed. I wasn't anointed. I'm just here to share my experience. And my experience is, I'm not drinking, and I'm getting worse. And I'm confused, because it seems like I should get better. People are telling me, don't drink and go to meetings, 90 meetings in 90 days, all of which is really good practical advice, but it has very little to do with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they're telling me, don't leave before the miracle. So I'm hunkered down, grabbing my butt, waiting for the miracle, and the miracle ain't happening. I'm getting worse. It's like a lot of white noise is going on. I'm really angry. The book talks about being restless, irritable, discontent. I'm just pissed off, and I don't want to be there. And I go to about 100 days stark raving sober, and I don't have a sponsor at the time, and I go on a business trip, and I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a trial lawyer by trade, so I'm doing some depositions. I'm getting ready for a trial, and I get done around midweek, and I go back to the hotel room, and in the hotel room I have an honor bar, a little mini fridge with a key, and I'm a newcomer, so I don't have any honor, but I've got this little mini bar, and if any of you have ever seen the movie Flight with Denzel Washington, you know that those little mini bars, those little honor bars, they talk to you. It's talking to me. We're having a conversation. It wants me to drink. I want to drink. Everybody wants to drink, but I know I can't drink. So I'm not drinking, and I'm not happy. And for reasons that are still a little bit unclear to me, I don't drink. You can call it the dumb luck of the alcoholic. Norm Alpe used to call it seconds and inches. I believe it's the grace of God, but I would have never called it that way back then. And when I was new, when I finally got a sponsor, my sponsor Michael had me read A New Pair of Glasses by Chuck Chamberlain. It's actually just from a series of talks that he gave in Palo Mesa at a retreat. And in that book, there's a drawing. It's a simple drawing, and there's only one drawing in the whole book. And what Chuck does is he draws a circle, and he puts all the people, plants, and animals in the universe inside the circle of life. And then he puts life, good, God, whatever your concept of a higher power is, inside the circle of life. So everything is inside the circle of life. And then Chuck draws a stick man outside the circle. That's Chuck, that's me. And if you're new, that's you, or that's who we think we are. Well, that's the grand delusion. It's the prime delusion of every alcoholic. I find out later that it's actually physically and spiritually impossible to be outside the circle of life. I'm inside the circle. You're inside the circle. We're all inside the circle. And the better reality is that there's not even an edge to the circle. But I don't realize that, and I certainly can't demonstrate that because I'm new. So I leave, I leave Pittsburgh, and I get home, and I get up the next morning, and I've had some time to think. So I've got a newcomer plan, and my newcomer plan, which I'm thinking is brilliant, is I'm going to leave. I was in the Army for 13 and a half years. I've gone through airborne school and Ranger school, and I spent a year in Korea. Then I went through selection and assessment, and I served as a Green Beret for a few years. And I spent some time in Beirut, Lebanon in 1983, where it was pretty interesting. And after a few years in Special Forces, the Army sent me to law school. And I went to law school, and I graduated from law school, and I served as a JAG for a while in operational law. When I got out of the Army, I was a major. I was serving in the Pentagon, and my job was I was the intelligence oversight advisor for the U.S. Army, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. It's kind of like talking about military music. It's rather ironic. And I had a part of my duties where I had to go all over the world to do coordination with various individuals who were doing intelligence support activities in a classified manner. My job, I worked in a SCIF, which is a sensitive compartment information facility. It's basically a safe. And I had blanket travel orders, which meant that I could leave anywhere because I was doing classified work. So I just would get done, and I would turn in the vouchers, and they would pay me. And I came back from one of the trips, and I turned in the travel vouchers to the Pentagon, and the travel clerk looked at it, and she said, "Oh, you were in the Philippines. What were you doing in the Philippines?" And I said, "Well, I can't tell you that because that's classified," which is true. But when I walked away, I thought, what the hell was I doing in the Philippines? I mean, I remember I went to Thailand. I know why I went to Thailand. There was a reason for going to Thailand. I have no idea why I was in the Philippines. Apparently, I was in the Philippines for a couple of days. And I guess I blacked out. I don't remember what happened. And when I left the Army in 1993, I'd kept a few things. I didn't think of it as stealing at the time. I want to be clear on that. I kept some things that I thought might be useful. I had some weapons and some demolition. And I had 13 passports that have my photograph. They're from different countries, and I hadn't turned those in the Army. And It's 1996 now. I'm a newcomer. I got 100 days sober. I'm out of my mind, and I've got this newcomer plan. So I get out this kit bag, this go bag with the weapons, the demo, and the 13 passports. And my plan is I'm going to leave. I'm going to take my blue tourist passport that has from the United States. It's got my name and my photograph on it, and I'm going to leave the country. I'm going to fly up to British Columbia. Then I'm going to head east, maybe for a week or two, go over to Europe, and I'm going to start flipping passports and identities so that Steve Lamb will cease to exist. And then when I get back, I'm going to head down to Costa Rica. I've got some former Army associates of mine that are doing some kind of interesting marketing and distribution down in Costa Rica, and that's my newcomer plan. And unbeknownst to me, the 13 passports that I had that I should have turned in 1993 were all current. They had not expired, but my blue tourist passport has expired. So I'm like out of my mind. I'm like, oh man, I can't even execute this seemingly brilliant plan, and I didn't know what to do. So I went to a meeting and I met a guy named Jim, and he became my grand sponsor without my permission, by the way. And I was just mentioning to Jim, we were talking about sponsorship, and I noticed that I hadn't done that. It felt like I'd done everything, but I hadn't done that. So I said that I think it's time that I should interview for a sponsor, because that's what I thought you should do. I mean, to me, people had said things to me like, find somebody that has what you want. And I'm like, I got a complex set of social issues. Not anybody can sponsor me. So I should interview this person to make sure I got the right person. And I'm explaining this to Jim, and he looks at me and he goes, man, you are out of your mind. You're pathetic. And he grabs me and he takes me outside. And he introduces me to a guy named Michael. And he says, Michael, this is Steve. Steve, Michael, sponsor, sponsee, go with God. And he walks away laughing. And I'm thinking, this ain't funny. It's not even slightly amusing. But Michael, he had, I think he had about 5 years at the time. And he's all excited because he's just been handed a new fish. And by the way, if you're an alcoholic, one of the greatest gifts you can give to another person is hand him a sponsee, and that's what Michael did to me. And so he reaches in his pocket, he gets out a piece of paper and a pen, he writes his name and his phone number on it. He tells me be there at 6:30 on Monday. He wants me to read the first chapter in the 12 and 12, which is on step 1, and then he wants me to read the first part of the big book. He wants me to read the preface, the forewords, all the way through the doctor's opinion, and highlight what you agree with, what you disagree with. If you've got any questions, just go ahead and write it in the book. We're going to discuss it. I'm like, all right. So I show up Monday night at 6:30. I got my book, and he starts out by telling me some stuff about himself, which I don't care, but I don't want to be rude, so I'm listening to him, and then he asked me about me. That's a good subject. So I talked about that for a little while, and I mentioned my newcomer plan, which he thought was hilarious. And then he said, okay, look, get out your book and start reading. I'm like, no, I did. I'm ready to discuss it. You said we would discuss it. I've got some questions. And in fact, I'm thinking, it's really not written very well. I can probably clarify a few things. And he goes, no. What we're going to do is we're going to read this book. We're going to go page by page, line by line, word by word through the entire book. And I thought, oh my God, this is pathetic. This is a level of lameness that I never thought was possible. But I've been beaten into a state of reasonableness, so I got nothing. So I figure I'll read with a guy, and like I said, I'm kind of judgmental. So I figured he's probably stupid. He probably can't read. What the hell? I can read. I'll help him out, right? I found out later he's got a master's degree in nuclear engineering, and he reads real good. But for a long time, I thought my sponsor was an idiot. So I'm reading to my sponsor, and when we get to a prayer, we said the prayer. When we got to a step, we worked a step, and it saved my life. And if you're new, that's the point of the exercise. I mean, I had no idea. I remember I would see the window shades that have the 12 steps, and I would read them, and I'm a thinker, so I would realize, oh my God, 4 and 5, that's like confession, that's evidence. I'm not going to do that. 8 and 9, that's awful. I mean, I'm not stupid. I know it's their money, but some of them don't even know I've got it. And how is me giving them back their money going to help me get sober? This doesn't make any sense. I'm a newcomer. I need the money step, and there's no money step. The spiritual always precedes the material, but I don't get that. I can't realize that. I certainly can't demonstrate that. having difficulty with that. And by the way, if you're new and you're reading the big book and you're looking at the 12 steps or the window shades and you see them and you think they're stupid, that they're ridiculous, um, we don't really care what you think. And I'm not trying to be mean or rude, but the reality is what we do here in Alcoholics Anonymous is we act our way into better thinking. We don't think our way into better acting. I mean, I can't get my way out of a wet paper bag when I'm a new guy. But for some reason, when I take actions that don't make any sense, it changes my perception of reality. I see things differently, whether you call it a spiritual awakening or spiritual experience. We don't really care, but it changes us. It transforms us through this work. And my experience is that if you do the work will do you. Attitude is kind of optional. I had a really crappy attitude when I first got here, and now I love Alcoholics Anonymous because I've done the work, So we go through this process, and like I said, I didn't really have a problem with the first step. And the second step is, I don't know, can I be restored to sanity? I guess it's possible. I think it's unlikely, but it's possible. The third step says I'm going to make a condition, and we're going to make a decision, and we say a little prayer. On page 63, I don't even know that I mean it, but I said the prayer. It means a lot more to me now. And then, we get to this fourth step, and I got to write an inventory. Michael points out on the inventory that on page 65, there's some columns. They're not even complete sentences. They're kind of bullet points. And what I need to do on the first column is I need to identify the resentment, the person, the institution, or the principle. The second column is the cause. I just 2 or 3 words. I don't need to spend a lot of time on this. The third column is the condition or how it affects you. Is it self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, sex relations? Just jot that down. And then he says we don't really have a fourth column, but on page 67, referring back to our list, we're going to identify mistake, fault, and blame. We call those character defects. Things like selfishness, self-centeredness, self-seeking, dishonesty, fear, the 7 deadly sins, pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, sloth. Some of my favorites. And we're supposed to just jot that down, and then we do this fear inventory. We do this sexual conduct inventory, and then we're supposed to read it to somebody on the fifth step. And he said it should take me a couple weeks. It took me 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks to think about it, and 2 or 3 weeks to do it, because like the book says, it's simple but not easy. The simple part's the written part, the instructions. The not easy part is just me and my ego, which tries to separate me from God. And I find out later that that's impossible, but I'm trying. And so I finally get done, and I got this inventory, and I'm going to read it to my sponsor, and particularly for the new people, just so you understand how simple the process can be. Like I said, I'm not telling you how to do an inventory. I'm just saying this is what I did. And so the first person on my inventory is my father. The first column is 2 words, my father. The second column, cause, is 2 words, deserted me. Now, like the book says, Michael's prepared for a long talk. He asked me some questions. I explained to him, and it's the early 60s. I'm 4 or 5 years old. I'm living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and my father's in the Air Force. He leaves. He goes to Southeast Asia. He winds up in Vietnam. He does a couple tours in the Air Force. He joins an outfit called Air America. Meets a Thai woman, Lien Thong. Apparently, he marries her before he divorces my mother. I've got a half-sister, Peck. I've got a stepmother, Lien Thong. I've never met either of them, and I've hardly spoken to my father in 3 decades, and he deserted me. What does it affect? Everything: self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, sex relations. Other than that, it's going pretty well. But I find out later this is one of these Mogan Gator resentments that they talk about in Florida. It's huge. I don't realize that. And it's interesting how many men and women in Alcoholics Anonymous have mommy issues or daddy issues or both. I certainly did. And so I write this inventory out and read it to my sponsor, and he said, wait a minute, I want to make sure that I understand this. You're resentful at your dad, right? I said, yeah. He deserted you when you were a young boy. That's right. And if I understand you correctly, the defects of character that you identified is you've got some residual anger, you've got some serious fear, And you don't want to forgive your father. You don't want to do what it talks about in page 67. Sometimes it's referred to as a prayer to the sick man. You're not willing to ask God to help me show this person, my father, patience, pity, and tolerance. And I'm like, yeah, that's right, Michael. And I've read ahead. And I know there's a ninth step there. That's not going to happen. And he goes, well, he kind of chuckled. He goes, I understand that, but we're just doing the fifth step. He goes, we're going to get to that later. He goes, but I want to make sure I understand this. I've got a couple other questions. I'm like, all right, what are they? He goes, if I understand you correctly, you had that newcomer plan, right? Yeah. And you had the passports. Yeah, I had the passports. And you were going to go to Costa Rica, right? I said, yeah, that's right. And he goes, and you've got a wife and daughter, right? And I thought, oh crap, I know where we're going here. And then he goes, you weren't going to take your wife and daughter with you, were you? Well, yeah, well, that's true. And he goes, well, is there really a functional difference between what you were planning on doing and then what your father actually did? And my first thought was, this is not going the way I thought I was going to go at all, right? And I muttered something to the effect, well, yeah, if you look at it that way. And if you're new, that's why in the fifth step, we admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, because I cannot look at it that way. I can't. It's impossible. I need somebody, in this case, my sponsor, to hold a mirror up to me to reflect me back to me. And so now I've become my dad. And I find out later that this is a spiritual experience, but it's not like the white light spiritual experience that Bill Wilson talks about. My sponsor jokingly refers to it as like a black light spiritual experience. And what he means by that is, if you've ever seen any of these crime movies, somebody gets killed, they get murdered, right? So the detective, he wants to basically protect the scene, and the uniformed cops come up and they put the yellow tape around the scene so that nobody can come inside, right? And then after a few minutes, somebody shows up. It's a man or a woman, and that's the CSI, the crime scene investigator, and they got a little toolbox, and they come in the scene. They put the little booties on and the gloves on so they don't contaminate the scene, and then they take a substance called luminol and they spray it all over the walls. And then they turn the lights off and they turn on a black light. And what happens is, if there's been blood spatter, you can see that, in phosphorescence all over the wall. So you can see the scene of the crime. And that's what happens when you expose yourself to a fifth step. I can see the scene of the crime. I can see, my mistake, fault, and blame in relation to my father. But I'm not particularly happy with this. And my sponsor says, okay, get quiet and, review what you've done. And, it's on page 75 and 76, you're going to flip the page. You're going to do 6 and 7. 6 is a lot about willingness. 7 is a lot about humility. I very little either. I say the prayer. I don't even think I mean the prayer, but I say the prayer because I'm scared. I don't want to drink, and I get, on page 76, it says, now we're going to go to our 8th step. And it says, we have a list. We made a list when we did our inventory. And I thought, oh, crap. Because my father's on that list. So I'm flexible. I'm a lawyer. I just took his ass off the list, right? And I get done. I got this list, and I got these, proposed amends, and my sponsor doesn't trust me, so he says, I want to see the list. So I show him the list, right? He's looking at the list, and he says, your father's not on the list. I'm like, yeah, I told you he wasn't going to be on the list. He goes, well, do you think you're any better than your father? And I'm like, no, I get that. I go, I get that. He goes, okay, what do you think about the Lord's Prayer? I'm like, what? He goes, the Lord's Prayer. What do you think of the Lord's Prayer? I said, I don't know. We say it a lot at the end of the meeting. I don't have a problem with the Lord's Prayer. It's okay. I like the Lord's Prayer. I don't have a problem with the Lord's Prayer. He goes, well, what about that clause in the Lord's Prayer? It goes like this: forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. What do you think of that? I'm like, I think it's a damn trick question. That's what I think. I'm not stupid. I get it. I understand the spiritual principle. He goes, well, are you willing to do it? I'm like, hell no. No way. No way. No way. He goes, well, look, step 6 and step 8 are a lot about willingness. Are you willing to pray for the willingness? Sure. Okay, I'll do that. And now I got to start making amends. I'm paying back the money. I make amends to my wife. I'm back in the big bed. And have the crossover privileges that I think I deserve, but things are going better. I'm in this 10-step process. I'm trying to, I'm doing this evening review that it talks about. I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm trying to practice the principles. I'm trying to carry the message. And there's these new guys that are asking me for help. They tell me they want me to take them through the book. So I take them through the book and they do the steps and they get sober. And now some of them are sponsoring other guys. And we've got this whole merry band of miscreants. And I'm sober and they're sober. But I am not making amends to my father. Not doing it. And my sponsor is encouraging. It's not like he talks to me every day about this, but every few weeks or a few months we have a conversation. He goes, "Well, what's going on with your father?" "Nothing." "Are you praying and meditating?" "Yeah." "Well, what's coming to you?" "Nothing. I'm not getting a memo. I'm good. It's fine." He goes, "Well, all right. So just keep praying, keep meditating. It'll happen." And then after a few years, I'm just having a conversation with Michael, and I'm explaining to him, I'm not going to be around for a few days. I'm going to miss my home group on Monday night because I have to go to Anchorage, Alaska. I'm doing some depositions. I'm getting ready for a trial, but I'll be back at the end of the week. I'm just telling him what's going on, right? And he gets all excited. He lights up like a Christmas tree. He's like, "God, that's great. You'll make amends to your father." And I had forgotten that I had mentioned to Michael that my father at the time was living in Wasilla, Alaska, which is about 30 miles outside of Anchorage. So now my sponsor is connecting to clearly unrelated dots, right? And if you're new, they'll do that. It's annoying as hell. And I'm like waving them off. I'm like, whoa, 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 Michael. This is business. This has nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. And he kind of leans in and he chuckles and he laughs. And by the way, if you're new, sponsors, they laugh a lot, which is annoying as hell. They're not even laughing at you. They just are like, "Oh my God, there he goes again," right? And he says, "Look, Lamb, everything has everything to do with Alcoholics Anonymous," which I realize now, but I didn't get it then. And he goes, "Look, pray and meditate, talk to God, it'll come to you, and call your father." So I call my father. He says he'll see me, and I fly up to Anchorage. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I get up there, and without really even thinking about it, I just grabbed my father and I hugged him, and he buried his head in my shoulder, and he cried, and I cried, and forgiveness occurred, and I just had to show up and get out of the way. And we had some subsequent conversations about it because I was told what to do, and I did that. And I asked him if there was anything I left out, anything I needed to do, and we were good. And a father is restored to a son, and a son to a father, and that's Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got to tell you, a couple years ago, my father passed away. He had congestive heart failure. He was in the hospital. So it was during COVID time. He didn't have COVID, but nobody could go see him because of COVID, and I couldn't go see him. And Leanthong, my stepmom, couldn't see him. Pep couldn't see him, but we could talk to him on the phone, and we taught him how to FaceTime. And I think he was 87 or 88 at the time, and he was an older guy, so he didn't really understand the technology. So I would have him FaceTime, right? And but he didn't understand the concept that FaceTime is you hold the phone up to your face, right? He couldn't hear very well, so we would hold it up to his ear, right? And so I'd have these conversations with my father's very hairy ear, and I couldn't seem to get him to understand that. But the point is, my father, he eventually he made amends to me. He talked me through, and he made amends to me, and I'm not judging, but it wasn't a very good amends. I mean, if he'd have been somebody that I sponsored, I would have had him do it a little bit differently. But that's not the point. The point is, this is my father, and he made amends to me, and we were clean. We were clean. It was a good deal, and I understood because I experienced forgiveness, and I know that this forgiveness thing works, not because we talked about it, because my sponsor, and others have kind of walked me through this process, and I know this works because, like I said, about 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago, I got shot, and I'd been shot before. I was in the military. I got shot when I was in Beirut, but it was like a flesh wound. It was not that big a deal, but this time it was pretty significant. I was in Badger, California, which is in Northern California. It's a beautiful area next to Sequoia National Forest. And I'm in a cabin, and I'm sitting I'm sitting on a bed in my cabin. I'm minding my own business, and the guy upstairs, the upstairs cabin, was thought it would be a good idea to clear his Glock 9mm weapon, which is ordinarily not a problem, but he missed a really critical step. He forgot to remove the magazine. So when he pulled the slide back and released the slide, he actually jacked around, and he went to clear the weapon, and he pointed it at the floor that he was on, but there was a ceiling above me, and it went through the ceiling above me, and it entered my chest right near my heart. It lodged in my sternum, and it got my attention, and he heard it. I yelped, and he comes running downstairs. He comes around the corner, and he goes, "What happened?" I'm like, "You shot me. That's what happened, right?" And I got a towel on my chest, and it's bleeding, and he's freaking out. I'm trying to calm him down, which was bizarre. It was unexpected. I'm trying to calm him down. I'm not mad. I went right into acceptance and forgiveness. I just, it's going to just calm down. It's going to be okay, which is startling to me because I don't know what your idea of a, justified resentment is, but it seems to me like getting shot should be pretty high on the list, right? But I'm not resentful. I'm trying to calm this guy down, which is Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not, not who I normally would be, So I was almost 20 years sober, and if it had been 22 years earlier, I would have been 10 different shades of pissed off. But I'm trying to calm him down, but I tell him, look, we got to go to the hospital. So we go down the hill, Visalia, and little town Visalia, and go to the Kauai Medical Center, and I go in the emergency room, and I explain it to the nurse, and they immediately, they go get a gurney, and I get 12, 13 people working on me. They do an overhead x-ray to see the round. They do an EKG, and after a few minutes, the cardiothoracic surgeon says to me, he goes, I don't know how this happened. This round missed your heart and your major arteries by millimeters, and it's lodged in your sternum. It's immobilized. The bleeding has stopped. So we're going to observe you for a while, but I noticed that when we did the EKG, you've got an atrial flutter, which is your heart is spasming, kind of like AFib. And he said, you're going to need some treatment for that after we release you. So they released me after a few days, and I go down to where I live in Southern California. I go to the Torrance Memorial Medical Hospital, and Dr. Carlson, cardiologist, does an EKG and says, yeah, you've got an atrial flutter. He goes, you've seen in the movies how they take the paddles, and they shock a guy? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, that's barbaric. We would never do that with you. What we're going to do with you is we're going to tape these pads to your chest that are hooked to an electrode, and then we're going to hit you with a jolt of electricity. We'll wait 5 to 7 seconds, then we'll hit you with another jolt of electricity. That'll stop your heart and then restart your heart, and hopefully it'll be in sync. And I'm like, Doc, I'm not that quick on the uptake, but that sounds like you're going to kill me. He's like, oh, no, we don't like to look at it that way. It's a controlled procedure. I've done it, several times. You'll be in the hospital, and by the way, before the procedure occurs, there'll be an anesthesiologist that will give you something that will make you comfortable. So I'm an alcoholic. I go from you're going to kill me to I am going to get comfortable. And it's not that I haven't been comfortable before, but I haven't been that kind of comfortable like in over, I don't know, 20 years. So I'm like, all right. And my sponsor's okay with it. I'm like, all right, Doc, sign me up. Let's do this thing. I got the gown on. I got my ass flying out the back. I got the electrodes on, and I got an IV in me, and Dr. Carlson's there, and then the anesthesiologist walks in, and he's got a syringe of comfortable, and I see him, and because he's my new best friend, I'm watching him all the way across the room. He leans over, he starts talking to me, and then the next thing I know, Dr. Carlson's leaning over me. He's like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. He goes, well, how do you feel? I said, well, I feel good. I'm ready. Let's do the procedure. He's like, oh, no. We did the procedure. The procedure's over. I think it went okay. The procedure's over. And I'm looking around. I'm like hell, where's the guy where's Dr. Comfortable? Where's the anesthesiologist, right? And because I am arguing with my cardiologist about general anesthesia, because, if the younger people won't understand this, but the older people will realize that in the old days, they would give you general anesthesia. They'd tell you count back from 100, right? And you'd go 100, 99, And then and I'm looking for 99 or 98, and it ain't happening, right? And because the problem is they gave me this stuff called propofol. And in propofol, you're here and then you're here. There's no there. There's no 99. It's kind of bad dope. It's not good. And so I'm not happy about this, right? But the point of this, in addition to the forgiveness, is hopefully, if you're new, you'll get into the big book. You'll read the 12 and 12. In chapter 10 of the 12 and 12, there's a lot of discussion about the various forms of inventory that we do, and there's some discussion also about how a lot of us like to take the occasional retreat. We get away from the clamors of the world. We go to a safe, secure, serene environment where we maybe have somebody that's got some experience in AA. They'll take us through some step work or some spiritual work, or it could be a religious person. But the point is, it's a safe, secure, serene environment, a retreat. I got shot on an AA retreat, and I was leading the retreat. I'd given a talk the night before on unity, which I thought was pretty compelling, but the guy that shot me apparently was not paying attention. And I was scheduled to give a talk that evening. I got shot Saturday morning. Saturday evening, I was supposed to give a talk on acceptance and forgiveness. Yeah. But here's the best part. The guy that shot me, I sponsor him. I sponsored him then. I sponsor him now. He's actually got more time than me. And that sounds, oh, by the way, if you're new, that is not suggested. Do not shoot your sponsor. This is just what happened to me. It's just what happened on that particular time. And what I've come to believe and what I've come to experience is that, if you're an alcoholic, you're going to make a lot of mistakes before you get sober and after you get sober. I certainly did. My buddy Bill C says that, we get sober and we take off the clown suit. And that's certainly true. But if you're like me, we don't throw that bad boy away. We hang it up, man. We keep it, we might need it one day. And I've used it many, many, many times. And on this particular occasion, the guy that I sponsored, he used it, and he made a mistake. I've made mistakes. We all make mistakes. And I got to tell you, this forgiveness thing, it's really the fulcrum for a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, a psychic change, whatever you call it. It's a big deal. And a lot of times we think, I don't know. I mean, I do a lot of retreats, and a lot of these guys they'll say, well, I'm having difficulty. All right, well, have you made your amends? Well, no, not all of them. Yeah, that may be one of the things that's blocking us. A lot of people will talk about, I got a really busy head. It's because you got a lot of stuff going on. If you make amends, you won't be thinking about all that crap so much. You'll be thinking about guys like McNeil. They'll drive you crazy, and you won't have to worry about them because you'll be thinking about God, and you won't be thinking about yourself. And that's been my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. The 11th step on page 99 of the 12 and 12, they talk about the prayer of St. Francis, Lord, make me a channel. The religious version is, Lord, make me an instrument. An instrument's cool. An instrument's fine. There's nothing wrong with that prayer, but I can wield an instrument. I can hit you over the head with an instrument. I have to clear a channel. The way we clear the channel is, really 4 through 9. That's how we clear the channel. We uncover, discover, and discard. And it's really necessary to clear the channel in order to really be able to get into the silence and to be able to meditate. So if you're new, I encourage you to go through that practice. And if you're new, it doesn't sound like a good idea. My hope is that you actually don't have hope. My hope is that you're desperate, because my experience is that if you're desperate, you'll do the work. I was desperate. If you're out of options, you'll do the work. We talk a lot about experience, strength, and hope, but if I have hope, I'll wait for something to happen. I won't take action. If I'm desperate, I don't have any options, so I'll take action. And the phrase that you hear a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous is, oh, now we're going to have, Sherry's going to share her experience, strength, and hope, or Glenn, or Giselle. And if you think about it, that phrase, experience, strength, and hope, that starts in the 3rd edition. It's not in the 1st or 2nd edition. If you read the first 164 pages, it's not about experience, strength, and hope. It's about experience, powerlessness, and desperation. And if you're new, that sounds awful, but I got to tell you, it's the gateway to grace. It's the gateway to grace, because it'll propel you into a course of action that you can't believe, that won't make any sense. but it'll work, you know. And if you're new, I want to tell you that you're with us now. And if you look around and you think about it, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, oh man, you guys are not very impressive. You know, I don't like that. But I can assure you that we grow on you. And after a while, it becomes humorous. For initially, what happens is I find myself laughing, and it's kind of startling. You know, it's disconcerting. And Annie Lamott once said that laughter is carbonated holiness. You know, and that's what we get in Alcoholics Anonymous. What happens in Alcoholics Anonymous is we laugh at our tragedies and we cry at our successes, and it doesn't make any sense because it's not the material, it's the spiritual. And so, you know, if you're sitting there thinking, oh God, this is awful, this really sucks, I agree. It does. My experience is that if you lean into it, if you embrace the suck, it'll just be 2 or 3 minutes of your story at one point in time, and that will turn around and will be useful to that next man or that next woman, because that's been my experience. And I got to tell you that that's something that I never ever thought would happen. It's very bizarre in my view. It's rather illogical because it's spiritual, you know, and Alcoholics Anonymous is experiential. Um, you're here to have your experience, not my experience. You know, we talk a lot about a God of our understanding, and how do we get that experience? We get that experience, we get that understanding by taking action that results in experience that we then formulate into a view of our life, perception. You know, it's like we could talk about gravity all day. There's a scientific formula for gravity. I can hold up an object, I can drop this pen, and you can see gravity. But if you want to experience and understand gravity, go on the top of the roof, jump off. The moment that your ass makes contact with the ground, you will experience and you will understand gravity. And that's what happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. We take certain actions, we have an experience, and then we develop an understanding. And as long as we keep and maintain an open mind, and we try not to lift into more reflection, it's actually pretty entertaining. You know, we do some pretty bizarre stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous, but we stay sober and we keep working with others. And that's why where it talks about at the beginning, you know, readiness to serve. You know, I believe I have that readiness to serve. And my prayer is and hopefully will remain as use me. Because my experience is if I'm being used, I'll feel useful. You know, and that kind of the crucible of sponsorship, you know, where we forge this concept of love is through service. And if you're new, I can assure you that probably doesn't make any sense to you. I wouldn't expect it would. But if you come with us and you do what we're doing, you'll come to believe because you'll have the experience and then you'll understand. And all you're going to want to do is sit around and help the next man. So I hope you find that here. Thanks for calling.